The Daily Wire's Matt Walsh continues to throw haymakers at the Trump administration over the Iran war. Let's get into it. Before we go further, my name is Casey and I've been a therapist for more than 13 years. I am a father of 4 who is extremely concerned where our country is going, and I built this channel expressly with the intent of promoting a future of faith, fatherhood, and freedom in America. If you can get behind that, please like on the way in. I'd love to earn your subscription. If you've been following Twitter, there's no secret that the Daily Wire's Matt Walsh has taken severe umbrage with the way that the Iranian conflict was being relayed to the public from the Trump administration. He's also taken a severe stance against other people at the Daily Wire who are either bullish on the prospect of the Iran war like Ben Shapiro is, or moderately optimistic like Michael Knowles is. Matt Walsh has simply said that he disagrees with the premises of the war as well as the ways that it's been communicated to the public. Now I'm reading from Mediaite. This is Caroline Leavitt finally answered back on X about what Matt Walsh has been saying. What he said initially is, so far we've heard that although we killed the Iranian regime, this was not a regime change war. And although we obliterated the nuclear program, we had to do this because of the nuclear program. He posted on X. And although Iran was not planning any attacks against the US, they might also have been, depending on who you ask. And although we are not fighting this war to free the Iranian people, they are now free, or might be, depending on who seizes power. And we have no idea who that will be. The messaging on this thing is, to put it mildly, confused, is what Matt Walsh initially said on X. And he's been expressing that pretty clearly on his daily show on the Daily Wire. What I would really like to see from the Daily Wire at this point, because he and Shapiro are so far apart on this issue, is I would like to see them do a debate in person on their platform. Why wouldn't they do that? And that would absolutely be a banger. But I also don't necessarily want them to disagree so fervently that Matt Walsh ends up needing to quit or being fired, because I really appreciate him being there. I think his documentaries that he's able to make through the Daily Wire probably wouldn't be possible if he went independent. And I think the What is a Woman documentary absolutely changed my industry, the therapeutic industry, because they needed to begin to reckon with what a woman was and ultimately answer some deep questions about how therapists play a role in people getting their nuts chopped off. Leavitt replied with a lengthy screed laying out President Trump's stated objectives in Iran. On Saturday, this statement laid out the clear reason for Operation Epic Fury, according to her. She says, let me reiterate his point. Destroy the Iranian regime's missiles and raise their missile industry to the ground. Annihilate the Iranian regime's navy. That makes sense for the shipping lanes, which is exactly why our gas prices have gone up by $1 here in Ohio in the last 2 weeks. Ensure that the terrorist proxies can no longer destabilize the region or the world and attack our forces. Stop them from making IEDs, roadside bombs, and all the things that they've used through Hezbollah and other proxies to hurt Americans. Prevent the radical regime and its terrorist leaders from threatening America and our core national security interests, which is a clear-eyed and necessary objective, Caroline Leavitt said. Now, this, you can take that either way. And yes, there has been some possibly, dichotomous communication from the White House about, as Walsh said, is it regime change? Is that what our objective is? And if so, who's the person who's going to take over? Which I definitely have interest in, because a destabilized Iran, even more destabilized, is of interest to Americans exactly zero. So it's time probably for us to figure out who's going to come in, how can we restabilize, because I do believe the Iranian people want more independence than what they've had under the regime that they were having to put up with for the last 47 years. And I do believe that the Persians are a strong and nationalist people who deserves to have leadership that presents some stability. Here is probably the real meat and potatoes, and if there was potentially a backdoor reason why this regime change situation was put forward by the admin in the first place. This is it. And this is what Leavitt replies. She says, Midnight Hammer did obliterate Iran's nuclear sites. The regime was fully committed to rebuilding their program, and they refused to make a deal. And you know, Trump is big on the art of the deal, of course, that's his thing. So when he can't make one, I think he gets particularly frustrated. She says, for 47 years, the Iranian regime has actively and intentionally facilitated the killing of Americans while chanting death to America and funding bloodthirsty terrorists throughout that destroy the United States and Western Civ. Prior American leaders are too weak and too cowardly to do anything about it. Now, President Trump is correcting decades of cowardice. The brutal attacks and threats will finally end under President Trump. I think that what the Trump admin is probably a little too disconnected from the ground to realize is that younger generations who they were winning over, especially in the last election cycle, are not interested in things that appear to be hand-holding with Israel. Now, Israel might be in some way a benefit as they begin to continue to plague the region with all of their missions and all of their military escapades that they do throughout the region. That might, in some proximal ways, be an advantage to America, as they are essentially on the same side as we are. And the Abraham Accords kind of brought other people in the region into the fold. And there is reason for optimism there, because I think a united Middle East could be one that is much more peaceful than it was now. However, the hand-holding with Israel, with all of the things regarding the Gaza situation, as well as the Epstein files, even, and his links to Israel, it just, if it echoes of being pressed forward by Israel, the younger generations, Gen Z, has a very low approval of Israel and Israel's escapades. And so if the Trump administration didn't have a very good reason, they are sacrificing their electoral stability in the future by doing this, because the next two generations are people who have seen Israel as being an unnecessarily costly ally. And it, at the very least, ranging all the way from that to severe dislike and even hatred of Israel. And so if you want to win future elections, you have to look at least toward neutrality in how we relate to Israel. And I don't believe that Trump, being from the generation that he is, the baby boom and the establishment of Israel, previous to his being born, I do think that this is just one that the boomers have a different view on than does Gen Z. And I'm not saying who's right. I'm not saying which one is necessarily the truth, because it's probably somewhere in between. But if you do want to win elections in the future, you might want to look out for how closely you handhold with Israel. Matt Walsh replied to Caroline Leavitt in this fashion. He said, I know some of my followers here are annoyed at me because I call it like I see it. At a basic level of honesty is an obligation that comes from having a public platform. This operation seemed like a bad idea to me before it happened, and I said so. Now that is happening. And he goes on a little bit here. Let me check exactly what his tweet was to try to get the exact verbiage beyond that. But Matt Walsh is quite simply, I think, taking the America First tactic here that looks a little bit more like, how does this benefit us specifically? And while this Iranian conflict might have a direct benefit to America, I think that Walsh is right in this way, that they didn't make that case accurately enough to the public, because this is going to cost American lives. It already has cost American lives, and without the expression of why it's happening in a very specific way, I think you might lose the plot, or at least lose future elections. He said, now that it is happening, I'm not going to suddenly change my tune. It still seems like a bad idea to me. I hope I'm wrong, but that's how I see it. I think in contrast to people like Tucker Carlson and Megyn Kelly, in this instance, Matt Walsh has not necessarily taken such a strong anti-Iranian war position that he would open himself up for severe criticism if the conflict goes well. I think that that is a really wise move for a commentator to make, because you certainly are allowed to have whatever opinions you want, but the internet is forever, and if you say something that's severely anti-American in these instances of war where everyone is keyed up anyway, you might actually live to regret it later. No matter how you feel about the conflict that's been going on in Iran, it is clear by what Matt Walsh has said, along with what the White House said in return, that there is a split among conservatives about whether this war is useful, whether it is America first, and whether we should be doing it anyway. What we can do as conservatives is unite behind the fact that we do support our military individuals, even if you believe that that support looks like electing people who won't send them to war. I completely understand that, but we do need to present as a support to the military personnel, and I live right by an Air Force base, and I know some people that are directly involved in trying to make that Air Force base run while this whole situation goes down, and I know the tension that comes along with and the great care that they take, most of them, in trying to do the right thing so that the military personnel can be safe, and also so that they do their job in as best as they can. We can support those individuals regardless of how you feel about the conflict. Pray for our soldiers. Pray, yes, as well for the Iranian people, that they would be able to come out of this with some advantage so that they would be able to thrive in the future, and pray that it is over soon. If you would like this video to be over soon, I would love your support. Please like, share, and subscribe. I'd like to talk to you later.